My name is Naomi Callahan. I was 31, and for 3 years I had spent my days restoring old buildings and my nights taking extra inspection jobs, all to save for one trip to Portugal. The night before my flight, my mother called and said I had to watch my sister's kids. She didn't ask, she told me. My sister had an emergency, she said, and expected me to cancel a trip I'd already paid for in full. When I refused, my father grabbed the phone. "Family comes first," he said. "Cancel it." I looked at my packed suitcase and thought about every birthday, every weekend, every chance I'd given up because someone else hadn't planned ahead. "No," I said, "not this time." An hour later, my sister texted that I was selfish, then added, "You'll change your mind when you see them." I figured it was just another guilt trip. The next morning at the airport, my parents called over and over, but I turned my phone off and boarded next to my best friend Paige. For the first time, I kept a promise to myself. 7 hours later, we landed in Lisbon. When I switched my phone back on, there were 38 missed calls: my parents, my sister, an unknown number, and the police. My sister's last text said 4 words: "There, at your door." What she had done turned a family fight into a child welfare case, uncovered thousands of dollars in lies, and forced my parents to finally choose which daughter they were willing to hold responsible. I stood in the airport terminal staring at my phone while people moved around me. Paige saw my face and quietly took my suitcase from my hand. I opened the security app for my house back in Millbrook. The first clip was from 8:14 that morning, less than an hour after I'd left for the airport. A dark SUV pulled up outside my house. My older sister, Renee, got out with her 8-year-old son, Owen, her 5-year-old daughter, Lily, 2 backpacks, a grocery bag, and a thin blanket. She walked them to my porch, knocked a few times, and looked straight into the camera. "Your aunt's inside," she told them, probably in the shower. "Wait here." Owen pointed at my empty driveway, but Renee was already climbing back into the SUV. Before she left, she tucked an envelope under the doormat. The next clip showed Owen knocking again while Lily sat on her backpack. It was 43 degrees and they had on light jackets. 20 minutes later, Lily started crying. Owen wrapped the blanket around her and tried calling someone on a small tablet until the battery died. Eventually, a neighbor noticed them, checked my windows, and called the police. Watching Owen try to protect his little sister felt like a punch to the chest. Renee hadn't just asked me to babysit. She'd made refusing impossible by leaving her kids at my locked, empty house after I'd already left the country. I called the officer who'd left a voicemail. He confirmed the children were safe. Neighbors had stayed with them until police arrived and child services got involved when no guardian could be reached. My parents showed up at the station, furious, not at Renee, but at me. My mother insisted it was all a misunderstanding. My father said I'd caused the crisis by leaving after being warned the kids needed me. Then the officer asked where Renee was. My parents said she was at a mandatory conference in Boston, though she'd never mentioned any conference until the night before my flight. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? Police found Owen and Lily outside your house." She replied, "I told you I needed help." "You chose a vacation. Don't act shocked, there are consequences." Paige, who worked in insurance investigation, told me to save everything. While we waited for our rental car, we downloaded the footage, saved every message, and built a timeline, then sent it all to the officer and the caseworker, a woman named Denise Ford. My mother called again. "You need to come home," she said. "Your sister is under so much pressure." Then she shifted. "Owen and Lily are traumatized. Do you want them placed with strangers while you're touring Portugal?" That line was aimed precisely. For years, my parents had turned Renee's failures into tests of my loyalty. This time, though, the kids were safe and professionals were involved. Going home wouldn't undo what happened. It would only teach Renee that a bigger crisis gets a bigger rescue. "I'm not coming home early," I said. "I'll cooperate with the investigation, but I won't take the blame for Renee's choice." My father shouted that I was destroying the family. I hung up. The next morning, Denise called with something that changed everything. Renee's employer confirmed there was no conference. She'd been fired 11 days earlier, and no one knew where she'd gone. Denise asked if Renee had a pattern of disappearing or misusing money meant for the kids. I wanted to protect my sister, but I remembered Owen wrapping that blanket around Lily, and I told the truth. Renee had always created emergencies that looked like accidents, borrowing my car and returning it empty, using M. Y emergency credit card in college and calling the charges fraud, asking me to babysit for an hour that turned into overnight. 3 months before my trip, she'd announced a promotion at the recreation club where she worked, posted photos of galas and dinners, and claimed her ex-husband Josh had stopped paying child support. When she said the kids' after-school program was about to cut them off, I wired her $1,200. Denise asked for proof, and I sent the bank record along with Renee's message thanking me for saving the kids' routine. Reading it again, it sounded rehearsed. Paige and I rewatched the porch footage. The SUV driver never got out, but his hand was on the wheel wearing a heavy silver watch, one I recognized from photos Renee had deleted. It belonged to Trent Wexler, a married club donor she'd introduced at a fundraiser while insisting he was just a contact. The truth came out fast. Renee had been fired after money vanished from a winter coat fundraiser. She blamed a duplicated vendor invoice, but an internal review traced payments to a digital account under her own email. Over $9,000 was missing. Her Boston conference was really a 4-night resort trip with Trent. Hiring a sitter cost money she no longer had, so she planned to leave the kids with me without asking, and my trip wrecked that plan. So, my refusal became, in her telling, the crime. When I confronted my mother, she said I didn't know the whole story. Renee had panicked because I'd refused to help. She abandoned her children, I said. Panicked? My mother repeated. Because of you. I asked if she'd watched the footage of Owen trying to keep Lily warm. She cried and accused me of using the kids to punish the family. That night, I dug through old messages and found nearly $6,000 in transfers over 4 years, labeled rent, dental work, school fees, plus a fundraiser Renee ran claiming Owen needed therapy insurance didn't cover, which pulled in over $4,000. I called Josh, whom Renee always painted as unreliable. He was horrified. Owen's therapy was free through school, and Josh had never missed a support payment. Renee had asked him to give up 2 weekends for her conference. When he offered to keep the kids instead, she refused. She hadn't left them with me because no one else was available. She'd left them because giving them to Josh would expose the lie. Renee came back to Millbrook 2 days later and told Denise she'd had a panic attack. Shown the footage, she changed her story and blamed me for misleading her. She called from our mother's phone. "Come home and tell them it was a misunderstanding," she said quietly. "You can fix this." That was the moment I understood I wasn't her sister to her. I was the person assigned to absorb her mess. "No," I said. "This time the truth stays visible." She spent the next 2 days posting online about a jealous relative exploiting her mental health crisis during a childcare mix-up. She never named me, but everyone knew where I'd gone. Relatives messaged me, one writing that vacations can be rescheduled, but children remember abandonment forever. I didn't respond publicly. Paige reminded me that reacting would just give Renee more material. I saved everything and sent it to Denise instead. On our 3rd day in Portugal, we drove along the coast, and for a few hours I let myself feel I'd worked 3 years for. Over lunch, Josh forwarded screenshots from an old group chat Renee had accidentally included him in. One message read that I always sent money when the kids come up. Another that she needed enough for the hotel deposit before Trent notices the cards maxed. The dates matched the week she'd claimed Lily needed emergency dental work. She'd studied my worry for the kids and turned it into a funding stream. In another message, she complained I was wasting money on some beach trip and wrote that leaving the kids at my house would snap her out of this independence phase. When a friend asked what if I actually got on the plane, Renee answered, "Mom will make her come back." My mother's call, my father's lecture, Renee's arrival at my door, all of it had been coordinated. Then a former coworker named Sherry reached out. She'd helped run the coat fundraiser and said Renee pressured junior staff to rush approvals, then blamed Sherry when the money disappeared. Sherry had emails proving Renee changed the payment details herself, plus photos from a private party the same night funds were withdrawn. She also had a form listing my mother as financial guarantor on a $7,000 vendor account signed 2 weeks after Renee was fired. My mother denied it until I described the paper exactly, then admitted Renee had promised a bonus that never existed would cover it. "Your father can't find out," she whispered. "He will." The club's attorney reached them that evening. My father discovered my mother had quietly pulled almost $24,000 from their joint savings over 18 months to cover Renee's debts and legal fees. Their marriage Seeked open, my father demanded every document I had. "Get your own lawyer," I told him. "I'm not managing this for you." Days later, my neighbor told me police had collected the envelope under my doormat, temporary medical authorization forms for Owen and Lily, a handwritten schedule, and $40. My name was on the forms as caregiver, but the signature wasn't mine. Renee had forged it. At the bottom, she'd written that our mother could help Sunday if Naomi starts complaining. That line ended any doubt. She'd planned for my resistance, not my consent. The officer added the forged documents to the case. Denise confirmed the kids were safe, and Josh was completing an expedited review to become their temporary primary caregiver, which he was granted. On a video call, Owen asked if I'd known they were coming. "No," I said. "None of this was your fault." Lily asked why I hadn't flown home right away. I wanted to promise I'd always come running, but that promise was the whole broken system. "Safe adults were with you," I told them, "and I love you, but loving you doesn't mean pretending your mom made a safe choice." After the call, I cried in the rental car. Boundaries didn't erase the pain, they just kept the pain from running my whole life. I wrote out a plan for my return. No more direct money to Renee, no surprise childcare, no access to my house, no use of my name. Any help for the kids would go through Josh, their school, or a verified provider. If Renee ever tried this again, I'd call the authorities, not negotiate. My father called before our flight home, his anger worn down to exhaustion. He admitted Renee had lied about her debts and asked why I hadn't warned him. "I did," I said. "You told me family handles things privately." He went quiet. Before boarding, I learned Owen and Lily had been placed with Josh. Renee kept supervised visitation only. Her last message read, "I hope Portugal was worth destroying my life." I answered once, "Portugal didn't destroy your life. It just stopped me from hiding what you did." Back in Millbrook, police tape still marked my porch railing. Inside, the guest room looked untouched, though my family had always called it the kids' room from how often Renee's children stayed there, a name I'd never actually given it. Renee showed up the next afternoon unannounced. I spoke to her through the camera instead of opening the door. She listed every consequence: the fraud referral, Trent blocking her, the eviction notice, Josh's custody, our mother cutting her off as things that had happened to her, never things she'd done. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Tell the case worker I'm a good mother." "Was leaving them outside good parenting?" "I thought you'd come back. You knew I was on the plane. I thought Mom would stop you." It was the closest she came to admitting it, and the camera caught every word. Our parents arrived because Renee had called them. My mother asked me to let Renee stay in my guest room. "No," I said. "She has options, a counselor, a friend, the housing program." "That program has rules," Renee snapped. "Exactly," I said. For once, my father didn't order me to give in. He told her to call the counselor. Renee, cornered, shouted that our mother had promised I'd always cave, and in doing so, finally let my mother see how long she'd been lied to. Renee spent that night in a motel, and the next morning entered a housing program requiring counseling, job applications, and accountability meetings. Over the following months, she faced formal fraud proceedings with the club, and the child welfare plan required parenting classes, evaluation, and stable work before any unsupervised custody. Josh stayed the children's primary caregiver. My father postponed retirement to rebuild their savings. My mother started her own counseling. I stayed out of their marriage and kept seeing Owen and Lily through Josh, paying providers directly rather than handing Renee cash. 6 months after Portugal, I stood in the balcony of a theater my crew had just finished restoring and thought about the difference between restoration and concealment. Real restoration exposes the damage instead of painting over it, which is exactly what my family had done for years. Renee eventually moved into a small apartment near Josh, sold her leased car, and used most of her income to pay down debt. Our relationship stayed narrow. She tested the boundary once over an electric bill and once by asking for an unsupervised weekend she couldn't explain. I said no both times and later found out there had been no explanation to give. My father eventually apologized for hiding behind family comes first instead of asking if the family was being fair. My mother admitted she'd feared holding Renee accountable would push her away. I told her that protecting Renee had pushed me away instead. Year later, I hung a photo from that Portugal coastline in my hallway, not proof I'd chosen a trip over children, but proof I'd stop. Letting manufactured emergencies run my life. Healthy families help each other through real emergencies, but help becomes harm when it keeps shielding a capable adult from consequences they created, and I didn't expose my sister for revenge. I stopped protecting her because the secrecy had gotten dangerous, and the fallout that followed was never mine to carry. It was always hers. Take a moment to comment your city or country. I love connecting with you all. Thank you for listening and supporting, and be sure to subscribe for more stories. More are coming your way soon. Until next time, stay kind to yourself and stay strong.